what do you think matters to Kawhi Leonard, if you could? Like, forget where he goes. Like, would he be difficult to represent as a client? Can you gauge, I mean, listen, everybody works in San Antonio. He didn't. He got tired of it. What do you make of Kawhi?
Well, Kawhi's personality reminds me of a player I worked with for many years and still work with, Derrick Rose. As quiet as Kawhi is, Derrick Rose is probably quieter than him, okay? And that personality in today's world is it doesn't fit because, we're constantly scrutinized by the media, whether it's social media, television, or what have you. We're looking for the big personality, the Michael Jordan personality, the Irving Magic Johnson personality. Those personalities, we tend to really keep the camera on, and it makes for great news. It makes for coverage. But Kawhi Leonard is a throwback. He's without question one of, if not the best player in the game currently. He is that good of a player. And I think he's a throwback in the sense that, every player that's played with him, every coach that's coached him, respect him. And every relationship that you have is always going to be built on respect. You respect his work ethic. You respect who he is. Even though he's not a talker, he lets his playing do the talking for him. So, you know what? He comes in, he doesn't say much, that's fine, but it's a rare combination because you want that first guy to have this huge personality, which he doesn't have.
I guess that's my question. Tim Duncan did it.
Yes.
But generally, Magic was a force of personality.
Yes.
Michael wasn't seen as a big personality, but I always had a feeling that Michael in the locker room did plenty of talking. Scotty, by the way, got the #1 mantle when Michael left, and I never felt he was quite comfortable with it. That's what I felt.
Well, yeah, Michael's personality fit. He was like three-dimensional. He was a great player. He had a great personality, and he enjoyed being the first guy.
He wanted to be that.
He wanted to be Michael Jordan. He wanted to be the best player. He wanted every night. He took on that challenge every night. Where I think Scotty had this incredible talent. He was incredibly gifted as a player, but Scotty wasn't always the guy that wanted to spend the extra 15, 20, 30 minutes to take the interview and answer all the questions and do all of the things that matched the talent. And I think that's why it was so great for him to play with Michael Jordan, because he could just be Scottie Pippen. And I think that's probably Kawhi Leonard's personality more than anything. So sometimes your personality doesn't fit exactly where you're at, but again, sometimes it does, and it's a perfect fit. And Scottie Pippen was the beneficiary of playing with Michael Jordan because he didn't have to do that for many years of his career.
I look at the Lakers right now, and I was saying with Joy, the Lakers, you cannot overcome bad bosses. I've had the opportunity. I've worked with a lot of good bosses and a lot of good people, and I've bounced around the country, 7 different companies. And there's a certain pyramid of success. We talked about it earlier where, with the Warriors, it's Joe Lacob, the owner, into Steve Kerr, Bob Myers, and then the veteran players. It's a very simple, nimble pyramid. I put it up here on the wall today with the Lakers. I got 9 different people with different opinions. I don't think LeBron can overcome it. What do you make of what wins in this league? What's the secret sauce of the recipe beyond, hey, we got a bunch of good players?
Wow, that's a great question. And I've been around in this league now 30-something years. And if there is a secret recipe, the recipe looks like this. You have 4 people that sit at this table of success. You have the owner, you have the general manager, you have the coach, and you have the player. If any one of those people aren't aligned with the other, it's a recipe for disaster. It will fail. It's guaranteed failure. So the one variable that you need to have success in this league is internal leadership. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. It can come from the players. It can come from the general manager. It can come from the owner. It can come from, the coach. It doesn't matter where it comes from. So what we're looking at is if you don't have the alignment of those 4 people.
And they don't.
Then this is what's going to happen. But this is a problem throughout the entire league. This isn't just the Lakers problem. You see this all the time. There's only one thing that allows these problems to go away, and that's winning. Winning covers a multitude of sins. Winning covers everything up. So the real issue here is that you have to address these issues with those 4 people, because those are the 4 people that stand to communicate, which leads to cooperation throughout the rest of the organization. They have to be aligned with one another to have success.
You're an agent with the Wasserman Agency. BJ Armstrong is joining us. So what if you had a client, let's just say his name was Kevin Durant,
Okay.
and he could make more money where he's at and has, I believe, a better structure where he's at, but he has things and pursuits that maybe, in your opinion as an agent, don't serve him well. What do you do as an agent? And I use kiddingly Kevin Durant, but let's use an anonymous player. He had something made up in his mind, and you wanted to dissuade him, but he is the player, and he's paying you. What do you do as an agent?
Well, first, you have to listen to your client. And that is my number one, number two, and number three, is I have to listen to my client and listen to what it is that is important to him and what he wants for his career. This isn't my career. It's his career. So I have to listen. And to be a great listener, I think, is one of the requirements to becoming an agent. You have to listen to what your clients are saying. Today's kids, they have spoken. And the one thing that they're hanging on to is they want the respect of the people that they're working with. That's the one thing I think that today's kids, unlike in my generation, or 25 years ago, today's kids are hanging on to the respect that they demand from working with the owners, the coaches, general manager, whomever, other players. Okay, when this league in like the 90s or so, the late 90s, is when I saw the shift in the way the players started to think at the tail end of my career. Players started, once the salary started being kind of, a standard across the board, all salaries were the same. The max was the max, the mid-level was the mid-level. You took away the competitive spirit of the player. That's when it changed. When you took away the competitive spirit, all the max players were going to make the same. All of the mid-level players were going to make the same. And then that's what took away the competitive spirit. And now the players are fighting for the one thing that's important to them, where they play. They want that. They're holding on to that because that gives them a say-so where they live, who they work with, how they want to be treated, and most importantly, where they think they can be most effective. And that's what you're seeing with today's kids. So if I was working with any player, and, I'll have, many players that will be a free agent this year, is to listen, to see what's important to them, and then to be able to discuss and try to get that place for them and make a win-win, not only for the organization, but for the player, because that's very important to today's player, unlike 20 years ago where we didn't really think about that.
Finally, B.J. Armstrong, an agent for the Wasserman Agency, an all-star and an NBA champ. Whenever I hear people bag on young kids and millennials and blah, 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 I'm like, time out. We didn't grow up with the devices. We'd be distracted too.
Right.
I am my son. That's what I would have done. Instead of being at the bowling alley playing Atari, I'd have been on my device all day. And so when people bag on the NBA players, I always look at them and I say, it used to be the high school coach barked at you. Mm-hmm. And no AAU recruiting you. You went to where you grew up. Yes. And then you went to college, and the college coach barked at you. And then you came in the NBA, and then fire coaches every 15 minutes. I don't blame the players today. They're, by the way, by 13, AAU coaches are recruiting them. Then basically college coaches are like, can we just come here for 1 year? And in the NBA, we fire coaches. Like, I think players are not more difficult. I think the system and the culture has changed, and they've been empowered, and they want more power. I watched LeBron's career, and I'm like, yeah, by the way, in Los Angeles, he surrendered the 1-year deal to a 4-year deal. It's done him no good. He probably would leave tomorrow if he could. So are the players changing? Has the culture changed? When I hear people bag on NBA guys, they're divas, there's prima donnas. Kind of go into that, how basketball when you started and the basketball 14-year-old today.
Well, the environment has changed, the coverage has changed, the popularity of the game has changed, and more importantly, you have more and more people that want to play the game. More and more people around the world. This is an international game now. A third of the league now are international players that are playing in the NBA.
A third
of the league. I mean, this game has just, the growth and popularity of the game is growing. So the game looks different. I think now the kids are way more informed. I enjoy working with the kids today. And more importantly, when I was 19 or 20, I didn't have this idea of how I could best, how the game should look from my eyes. It was always, well, he's the coach, I'm the player, and I just do what the coach says.
Right.
Just kind of like what you said earlier. Today's kid, they have an idea of who they are. They have an idea of how they can be most effective. And I think their exposure to the game and how they can be best used far surpasses what we did 20, 30 years ago. So I think today's kid is much more sophisticated in how you have to coach them. And I think Steve Kerr is an example of that. You have to communicate with today's player at a level that I don't think coaches are used to doing. I mean, you have to really, if you just took Steph Curry and just made him into a point guard, is that very effective for him? Because he arguably may be a better player without the ball than he is with the ball, and he's an exceptional player with the ball. So the sophistication in which you would have to coach a Steph Curry, I think now the game is more sophisticated. The problems, and these kids are way more skilled.
By the way, it used to be you could bark. You now have to form a relationship with a player.
Absolutely. Well, I think you should always form a relationship with a player. I think today's kid.
Well, Phil Jackson was a little ahead of that then.
Phil Jackson, you know what? Any way that you can communicate with someone, I think, is great. Phil passed out books. Phil had all of these different things. But the one thing about Phil is that he knew that the way he spoke with me was going to be different than he spoke with Scotty, which was going to be different the way he spoke with Steve, Dennis Rodman, Luke Longley. And I always respected that because he saw me. He just didn't see a Bulls uniform. He saw BJ, and I respected him for that. So, and that I felt comfortable playing for him just because I knew he was looking at me when he was coaching me.
How did he speak to Dennis Rodman?
That's another segment.
BJ Armstrong, absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Right around the corner from us. Got to have him on more often. NBA